Welcome all of you hobbyists, distillers, brewers, winemakers. Yep, I'm George, and as always, we are excited to have you here. Now, what does all this mean to you? Stay tuned. We're going to explain every bit of it. Well, now that we're back, you know that we've been doing a series of beginner distilling videos. And so this is actually the fourth of those videos. And on the first three, remember the first one was really just kind of like basic equipment and stuff you kind of need to get started. And then we did yeast. We covered all the yeasts, and those are just the things we just absolutely needed to know to get started. We did everything we could about sugars. Remember, we went this far into a topic that was that deep. And finally, we are now at the water. We are going to discuss water today. And hopefully we can enlighten you on some of the things that we've learned, or that we know, or that we've researched, and that we've experimented with. So what do these items in front of me have to do with you? Well, they have everything to do when it comes to water. Yes, with the exception of one. And that's this one. I just wanted to show you, this is just an example. I just wanted to show you what my copper springs look like after I had them setting in that solution that we made. Remember we made that solution on the tips and tricks video? Yeah, we did that, and that's what they look like, so they're ready to go. I'm going to set those aside. Now, in this description, and what we're going to discuss today is everything about H2O, water, okay? And hopefully this will enlighten everybody and kind of give you that warm, fuzzy feeling inside that you're really on the right track. Trust me, more than likely you are on the right track, provided whatever you taste tastes okay to you. Yes. Now we're also going to talk about another thing, because it's it's really a subcategory, and it fits so well with water because it's the preparation for yeast, and that's the nutrient levels. So as we discuss this, I've got a lemon, I've got a lime, I've got some citric acid, I've got some tomato paste, of course I got some baking soda. Oh yeah, and last but not least, and you know I've got friends that come over all the time, so that first bottle of the Saddleman's Cut is almost gone. It's about time to open up another one. But then again, isn't that what this whole hobby is all about? So I'm going to open this one and pour a shot. Yep. I'm going to have to tell you, you can watch me do that. This is primarily what this hobby is all about, is about producing something that you enjoy, that you can appreciate, and you can also share with others. And last but not least, no hangovers. Kiss the hangovers goodbye. Okay, and we'll follow through. Of course, we'll take it from here. In our next video, we'll discuss preparing a mash. Because if you've got this understood, then you're able to work your way into developing your own mash, your grain bill, and producing your own mash based on available sugars for fermentation. And then, of course, we'll get into different stills and how they operate, and then we'll demonstrate a bunch of them, and we'll walk you through the whole process. Cheers to everybody out there, and we'll get this started. Now, first of all, I'm going to need to zoom in just a little bit so you can see what I have, because I downloaded my own city's water profile. And you can do this as well. Just go to your city's website and go to the water distribution portion of your city, and if you click on that, any reputable city is going to have to, because there's a federal law and there's state laws all over the United States that require them to report water quality in your locality. So just download it and look at it. It'll tell you a whole lot about your water, but it doesn't tell you enough, and I'll share that with you and why. Now this is actually page 2 of our water report, which is 6 pages in length. And what this does is gives you a background, important definitions of what's used in here. ppm, parts per million, ppb, parts per billion. Some other requirements, millirems per year, and we're talking about radioactivity, and how minimum reporting unit, MRL, or minimum reporting limit, MRL. So it tells you what all of the acronyms used in the chart itself tells you. So don't skip this page. This is actually page 2. The very first page, of course, is the I love me. You know, I'm a great and wonderful place, and I'm providing I'm providing the best you could possibly get. And in a lot of cases that is true, but you know, let your conscience be your guide. All right. And I use a rubber band here. Here's what I'll do. I had these all printed up because, of course, they come to you in PDF, depending on how your city does it. So we'll peel this off. And what mine tells me is, and I'm going to highlight some of the things that may be important and some of the things that probably aren't so important. But here's inorganic contaminants. Now, inorganic contaminants are things that, minerals, things like that have no living substance and or are not organic to, you follow me? Barium fluoride, nitrate, cyanide, nitrite, and thallium. Now 2 of those you know right off the bat, you know, look, cyanide and thallium we already know that is really poisonous, okay? That's very toxic, but at very, very, very low levels, which you just can't seem to get rid of. They're always there somewhere, and thank goodness that we've got a requirement to test for that, to tell us what our average level was. This one was 0.04. And the minimum limit to report is 2. So we have no violations. This is a violation code and units of measurement. And it tells you on this side here the source of the contaminant. Where do they actually come from? And a lot of these come from just runoff. Some of it's fertilizer that's run off from local farms. Some of it just happens to be in the groundwater itself. It all just depends on where your water source comes from. Now, we're going to discuss that shortly too, is whether it's a stream, whether it's a reservoir, whether it's reverse osmosis. What is your water source? Because that's important as well. Chloramines. Chloramines is a group of things, and remember, chlorine is used to disinfect your water. I mean, as a matter of fact, chlorine is used even in a lot of bottled water. Bottled water sometimes just takes the local water source and filters that and puts that in bottle. Now, I'm not trying to stab marketers in the back here, but the truth of the matter is that you can take regular tap water and purify it. And you do that at home with a Brita or a zero water filter, which, oh, by the way, is number 3 on the list in the United States. Number 3 for removing chlorine, contaminants, minerals, and some of those other things that you don't want. So they'll use this filtering system, or they'll use ozone or ultraviolet light, and they'll bottle it and sell it to you. Not a bad idea. Okay, so these are our chloramines. Then we have disinfectant byproducts. And these are the total acids used in our water source. Now, first of all, you know, I haven't really gotten to anything that is really specific to brewing. Yeah, makes you wonder why. These are just safety concerns. Lead, copper, of course, and total coliform bacteria. Coliform bacteria is nothing more than a bacteria that really doesn't cause any diseases, but is linked to other bacteria that may be, if you're sensitive to it, or elderly, very, very young. And all of ours seems to be well within the range that's permissible. Here are some things. We have parts per billion. Oh, let me one here. These are contaminants that none of these, as a matter of fact, really affect, these are just runoffs from insecticides, those things that have nothing to do with the brewing industry, but tell you everything about your water itself. Now, how far have I gotten? I'm on page 3 of 6, actually of 5, because I only printed 5 of them. And we really haven't gotten to anything except for the chlorine. And none of these had any ill effect unless they were out of their parameters for brewing. So I've got this whole list of things. This will just tell you how much your water, what with the contaminants, and whether they're biological or whether they're mineral, or those contaminants that are in your water. These are undetected contaminants. Go figure. I've got a whole list here where none were detected, but they are all in there. Cadmium, oh gosh, asbestos, arsenic. Then finally, our last page really kind of describes something that's a little bit more aesthetic to our tap water, which is turbidity. Turbidity really is nothing more than a measurement of the clarity. You know, so it's either clear or it's not. Our water tends to be really clear. Oh, and now, manganese. In the manganese family, magnesium is a constituent or a portion of water that can be really, really helpful, and we're going to get to that. So I've got one, and other than that, there's radium. So if I remove this, you'll notice that there's nothing else left. So what did my water report actually tell me? Not a darn thing that I really needed to know, which was, what about potassium chloride? What about sodium chloride? What about biotin? What about some of those other things that we're really looking for, that we really need? Well, it tends to tell me that maybe they're absent, or they're just not tested for because the FDA doesn't think that they're necessary. I don't care. But we're going to get into that. We've got the board switched, and there's a lot of information here. Listen, if you're interested, of course, subscribe, comment below and all of that. But if you just go to the to the YouTube channel itself, type in the YouTube channel, Barley and Hops Brewing, and click the first one. It opens up the channel, and you can go to playlist and open up beginner's guide, and it will list these videos in order. Or you can, playlist on heating elements, playlist on different stills, a whole bunch of different playlists in there, so it kind of concentrates your search. Okay, gosh, there's so much. You know what? Let's just say, I'll tell you this much. If your water tastes good, you are the best judge of your own water content. So here's my advice to start with. And now this is, some of it's opinion, but most of it is really fact-based. Distilled water has everything removed from it, okay? All of your minerals are gone, all of your chemicals are gone, and it's sort of just like, it's just almost plain water. With some, it's been treated, of course, ultraviolet light or ozone or even chlorine. It's been treated in order to prohibit bacterial growth. Think about that, and that should it should lead you right to, should I use distilled water for brewing, for making a mash, or for making wine? And chances are you'll come to the same conclusion. Probably not, unless you're prepared to add a whole bunch of stuff to it, because it lacks everything that you need. See, now this is where water and yeast work so closely together, even before you add the sugar, is that your yeast needs an environment which is, first of all, healthy, but in that healthy environment is everything that's in that water. And then you have to have food, and that would be the sugar. So you see how these three connect and become so important. The three basic pillars of all fermentations: water, sugar, yeast. And if you got to get them all three right, and it's not that hard. Okay. A lot of people use water. And I was going to say, spring water. Spring water is a lot of runoff water from springs. And what carries with that is a lot of mineral content and a lot of things that are within the surface, because it's spring water, that tend to leave our water with a really nice, pleasant flavor profile, not very acidic, and it's also treated. So it's just one form of water. Then, of course, you have tap water. And tap water, some of it comes from springs, some of it comes from reservoirs. And in a reservoir, you'll have a little bit more biological elements in that water profile that are cleaned out through disinfectants, and not as much minerals. It kind of makes sense. You know, you get spring water, you've got all the minerals that are coming in. With a reservoir where you're collecting water and then you're purifying that water for your customer base, the minerals are just not present as much. Okay? Then you got reverse osmosis. That's purified water that's had just about everything pulled out of it, and use ultraviolet light and or ozone techniques to purify that water and provide it to you. But its source can be almost anything. Okay? Now, we have one other form of water that's provided, and that all depends on where your water comes from, and that is you have a water softener in the house. The water Your water softener removes the hardness, but hardness and alkalinity kind of go together. You know, it's that inverse relationship. You know, when one goes up, the other goes down. When one goes down, the other goes up. But it does a great job of removing the hardness out of your water. But when it does, it leaves the alkalinity behind. So, of course, you'll have to treat that as well. It doesn't have as much effect on the mineral content because those minerals do pass through. But your water softeners, I'm not even going to write those up there. Because you got water softeners, reverse osmosis, spring water, and all that stuff. Let's talk about something that's, I know we've all heard before, brewer's yeast, brewer's salts, when you're trying to treat water, okay? And you can treat your own water to your own desires, but I would just say just be cautious because you can always overdo something. Here's a question. George, can I over-pitch yeast? Well, you can definitely under-pitch yeast because if you under-pitch, meaning not put enough in, it just takes forever and a day for them to develop a colony, you know? You need to have the proper oxygen level, the proper nutrient level for them to, you know, to develop a colony. I mean, and it takes a while. So if you're not putting in enough, look, you could put in 1 grain of yeast, and that's thousands of cells. Will it ferment a 5-gallon batch? Absolutely. Eventually, if all things are taken care of, okay? But we always throw in, like for wine, it usually in a 5 to 6 grams in a satchel. Beer is routinely in about 11.5 grams. I normally throw in like 40 grams of distiller's active dry yeast. And the only thing that is just to ensure that you have enough yeast to get started, and then it becomes survival of the fittest. So it's kind of difficult to over-pitch yeast. It is very easy to over-nutrient your yeast. What happens when you do that? Well, it causes your yeast to do things that you don't intend it to do. So be careful if you're starting to add salts to your, and those are gypsum. Yep. You know, gypsum, really all it's adding is like sulfate and potassium, sulfate and calcium. and calcium. And those are necessary for your building blocks. You know, one does, matter of fact, the sulfate does a really good job of, if you're making a beer, of kind of mellowing out the flavor profile of your beer. And the calcium's really, really helpful in yeast propagation, and also it aids in hop extraction. You know, your hop flavors. So just be forewarned. You know, only use gypsum if necessary. Another one is going to be, what is it? Oh, yeah, Epsom salt. Epsom salts. And Epsom salts has a tendency to soften your water just a little bit, but also to lower the pH. Oh, gosh, yeah. Sodium chloride. There's another salt additive, and oh yeah, last but not least, baking soda. The baking soda by itself has a pH of about 9, but you can't measure that because it's dry. You put it in water. So if you're trying to raise the pH level into the alkalinity, you know, from, again, oh gosh, let's do this. 7 is neutral. Anything above 7 up to 14 is base, meaning alkaline. Anything below 7 is acidic. All right, and all the way down here at 1 is going to be like Clorox bleach, battery acid, stuff like that. Okay? So, and the perfect level for, as we always talk about, for distilling is somewhere in the neighborhood of 5.2. Somewhere in that range. So you're kind of like almost in the middle here, you know, or a little bit above the middle. So baking soda will raise your pH if you need to do that. All right. I hope I haven't lost anybody with any of that. I don't think. So, oh yeah, the addition of any of these, please be cautious about the amounts and do some research and find out. One of the easiest things for you to do is to take some of your water, go online and type in water lab. And there's a place where you can send your water off if you are that concerned and that anal about it. I use the tap water because it tastes good, or spring water that I can pick up because it tastes good. I use distilled water only for cutting. But if you're really, really interested and concerned about the flavor profile and or the basic ingredients of your water, send it off to a lab and have it tested, and they will tell you what you need to add to it. Well, that brings us to, yeah, not enough room. Boom, almost a blank page. It's blank now, but it won't be in just a second, because we need to talk about now the nutrient base for yeasts. First of all, if you're going to adjust the pH level, and you know, we had that graph on here from 1 to 14, 7 being in the middle. Normally, you'll find that your city-provided water, or whatever your municipality does, normally it's in about the 7.4 to 8.2 range, so a little bit more alkaline. All right, and that tends to be about the standard. Now, remember, my city water report didn't tell me what the pH was. I had to test it. Ours is 8.4. And that's quite all right for everything that we need to do. But what that does at the same time is I know that there's a bit of hardness that goes along with that. And over a period of time, we'll have a little bit of calcium buildup. You know, like in the shower nozzle, it makes it spray all over the different places. Yeah. So I know that that's there. I can reduce that. But I don't want to add any acids to my water sources that are coming in the house, so I just put up with it, like most people do. Yeah. Now, but when I'm brewing, it's important to adjust the pH of your water, and you can do that by using citric acid. Now, what is it? What if you don't have can you get citric acid anywhere? Not really. You just got to order it online and get to a brew shop. You can get citric acid. A really good source of citric acid is a lemon. Cut your lemon in half. You can use pH test strips. These come in many different forms. They will measure whatever it is you're looking for. Just get yourself some pH test strips, or get yourself a pH meter. You know, one of the two. If you're tracking that, and I'd recommend that you track your pH, especially for a mash or a Pilsner beer in particular, and some of your really good wines. But if you cut that lemon in half and then test your pH and then hold it over your bucket and squeeze the lemon juice in there, stir it up, test it again, you'll find out that you've just dropped your pH. And you're probably in about maybe the 4 or 5 range. If not, squeeze a little bit more lemon juice. Now, if you go too far, you can also use lime juice, okay? Lime juice will work. It takes a little bit more lime juice because it's not as acidic as a lemon. A lemon's really good. Can you use those little squeezer lemon juice things, the plastic ones you get at the grocery store? Absolutely. So don't even ask. Yes, you can use those. What if you drop it too low? Well, use some baking soda. Put a teaspoon of baking soda in there, stir it up, bring it back out and test it again, and you'll see that baking soda has a wonderful effect on raising the pH back up to a more alkaline environment. Here's a test for you. Take some tomato sauce, just a can of tomato sauce, and pour a little bit into a cup. Take a taste of it. You know what tomato sauce tastes like. Take a little bit of baking soda and put that in there. What you're going to do immediately is you're going to raise the pH to a more alkaline base. And when you taste it, it will be a little bit dull or bland. It'll start to lose its appeal of a tomato base. And that's because you're changing the pH of your tomato sauce. It's a wild thought, but it's true. Now, I have one other thing here. This is a 6-ounce can of tomato paste. And now for 3 people just this past week who have called in, and I said, hey, okay, you got a stuck fermentation, things aren't working right, you've done all the other things, we've talked through it. They had an initial gravity reading, they've got a present gravity reading. Things just aren't working the way, the temperature's right. All things considered, everything seems to be going well, but it stops. I have one caller who said, I don't know what it is, but this has happened to the last 4 batches that I've done, and I just don't understand it. And every time I use these ingredients, it stops. And it stops about 1/3 the way through fermentation, just sits there. So I said, you're not going to believe this, and please don't laugh, go out and get you a 6-ounce can of tomato paste and add that. And about 3 hours later, I got a phone call back. I said, George, you're not going to believe it. I said, yes, I will. Just tell me. It is activated and started going nuts, and that solved my problem, and I'll do that from now on. I said, you're welcome. Thank you very much, and appreciate your call. This has happened over and over again. Now, here's what I caution you about. Believe it or not, this has happened. I had somebody call. This has been some time. Said, hey, what do I do? I said, put a 6-ounce can of tomato paste in there. That's a great nutrient. And it's also a great addition to immediately drop the pH. Now, will it turn a little red? Oh, absolutely, but that'll go away. Don't worry about it. I said, drop in a 6-ounce can of tomato paste, and that should solve all your problems. The response I got back was, hey, can I use that can again? I forgot to tell him to open the can up and dump the contents. He just wants to use the can over and over again. I'm like, all right, sometimes you just have to be a little bit more explicit. Yes, please, open the can, dump the contents, and use that. All right? What is in turbo yeast? I hear this often as well, and give me a chance to turn off this fan. There, it's getting a little chilly out here. Okay. I get this a lot as well, is about turbo yeast. What is in turbo yeast? Well, turbo yeast is really yeast with nutrients, minerals, vitamins, and a few other things, and I'll share that with you. The first thing that turbo yeast has in it is called diammonium phosphate. There we go. I'll get that right. And diammonium phosphate is a base phosphate that is necessary for yeast propagation, for yeast health, and for growth. Okay? And it really does help. Amino acids. Now, your yeast will produce a lot of amino acids on their own, but it's really wise if you have some amino acids that you could add to it to kind of boost it a little bit. And also there's free amino nitrogen, FAN. That also is a partner for your amino acids. So anything you can add to that, which will help that environment for your yeast, will be, of course, would be helpful. This is in all. Vitamins and minerals. Now, all these are, really, believe it or not, they're just a whole bunch of potassium and magnesium. Those are your primary minerals that are there, and as well as vitamins. And that's, again, it's just an aid, because those start to deplete, even though they're resident. When you throw grains in, if you're using grains in particular, that level is pretty high, but it depletes very, very quickly. Will your mash ferment completely? Absolutely, it'll complete without it. But you want to do the best you can to help it along the way. Now, the one thing that you can put too much ammonium phosphate in. Okay, it's kind of hard to overdo amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. Kind of hard to overdo that. Of course, anybody can go crazy with just about anything. Zinc is a mineral, and this mineral is really, really helpful for the production specifically of ethanol, which is our goal in the first place. So that's already, now all these things are already in turbo yeast. You can add them afterwards if you don't have turbo yeast, and I'll get to that. And then last but not least, we have what we call ghost cells. A ghost cell is a dead yeast. It's a dead yeast cell. That's really all it is. It's a bunch of them. What this is, you see, the yeast will also cannibalize a dead yeast cell to extract all the nutrients and anything left over in that yeast cell in order for that yeast to continue to survive and also to grow rapidly. This is really helpful. Now, you can really boost. There are a bunch of different recipes out there for this, and they all actually work. You could actually take fresh yeast and then pasteurize it. And when I say pasteurize, I mean, you get a yeast colony growing really, really good. If you can heat that up to about 145 degrees and maintain it for about 10 minutes, you've pasteurized it. You pasteurize beer that way. You can pasteurize, and what that does is it kills everything inside. Pasteurization. If you use that slurry of all those dead yeast cells along with some yeast nutrient, Fermax makes a great combination of yeast nutrient which has minerals. It has minerals, vitamins, and amino acids, and a little bit of diammonium phosphate. And you put that together with your yeast, you've just made a good batch of turbo yeast. You follow me? You made your own turbo yeast in that case. You could also use just Daddy, Distiller's Active Dry Yeast, and the dosage is a tablespoon of yeast to 2 tablespoons of Fermax yeast nutrient. And for all intents and purposes, lacking any ghost cells and some of the addition of diammonium phosphate, called DAP, you've actually made some turbo yeast in itself. So the old folk, I hear this all the time, is, George, I'm not sure whether I should use turbo yeast or not because I hear it gives an off flavor. Well, you know what? The easiest thing to blame if you've done something incorrect in your fermentation and or your process, the easiest thing to blame is the one thing that you just have no idea of, or you can't control, or you don't understand. That's the yeast. So for those who say, I can taste it if you use turbo yeast, I question that. For those who say turbo yeast is useless, and it causes too many problems. I question that. Because in fact, if you do know what you're doing, and you add your yeast, and you include some vitamins, minerals, some amino acids, some ghost cells, and maybe you throw a little bit of diammonium phosphate in there, you're doing nothing more than using turbo yeast on your own. Come on, call it what it really is, okay? So that should wrap up just about everything we need to know about water, yeast nutrient, the balance of all of those. And this information is not close hold. It is everywhere. So please do some research, give us a call, shoot us an email, make a comment below, share us with your friends at least, if nothing else, because we like nothing more than to share all the information we possibly can with this community just to make you better at what you do. We are not accusing anybody of doing anything incorrect. Just want to arm you with the information so that whatever you do, you are successful. Your success is totally responsible for our success. And I do appreciate that. Happy distilling.